Okay, so this story, it interests me because, and I guess mainly because you kind of always want to know, like, what, how people decide to do the things they do. I guess what the process of conscious thought that leads up to something that's obviously, like, dumb. And I guess it's kind of maybe that's what interests everybody, a lot of people about it, because this is something, firearm safety, especially for people like a lot of you have probably grown up around firearms, and these are the commandments of firearms. If you're familiar with them and used to handling them, like, the safety part is almost ingrained. So this is what we know. The shooting happened during rehearsal for his movie. He did fire the gun, and it struck the cinematographer. She's the one that died, and the director got hit. Of course, he's cooperated with the investigation. It's a no-brainer. So apparently the assistant director had taken the gun off of a cart where it had been placed by the film's armor and handed it to Mr. Baldwin. This conflicts with a couple of stories that I've heard as far as how he actually got the gun. I guess I've heard that he picked it up off the cart himself, and that also he had put it in a holster and drew it once, then put it back in his holster, drew it again, and fired it. This just says he took it from somebody and I guess pulled the trigger shortly thereafter. Apparently days earlier, they had crew members that walked off a set. I don't think this is that uncommon in Hollywood, especially with low budget films. The hours are pretty grueling and can be demanding, from what I know, my limited knowledge of cinematography. And, this happens. This kind of stuff happens a lot in Hollywood. They have horrible track records of being, decent people to work for. Decent people, period. But that's a whole other story. Yeah, he's really sorry. Apparently there were at least 2 accidental gun discharges on the set on the 16th of October, several days before the fatal shooting. And then I guess somebody or multiple people filed a complaint about the accidental discharges. An AD is a pretty big deal. In the gun world, it's a pretty big deal. So even if it doesn't hit anybody, it could have, and there's no reason to have an AD, because if you follow the rules of firearm safety, there should never be one. Just should never be one. The fact of the matter is, Alec Baldwin has been handling weapons since the early days of his career in Hollywood. If you remember Hunt for Red October, that was in 1991. He used a gun in that movie. So he's had a lot of movies where he's used firearms. It's really odd. It strikes me as odd. There's just a lot of things that don't make sense about this. As far as him being around firearms for that many years, and still he would pick it up and not be able to check it himself. But even if they can't check it, and I know there's some rules that say, I guess there's some policies and procedures in place that say that actors are not supposed to check the weapons. Okay, but the person that he shot, as far as I know, wasn't in the movie. They were a crew member. So why was he pointing a gun at them? You know what I mean? It's not part of the movie. Okay, now in the case of Brandon Lee, he was in an action scene, right? I don't know if the gun was supposed to be pointed directly at him back in those days or not, but he was in a scene where he does get shot in the movie. His character gets shot. Okay, so there's some context there. So the gun is going to be pointed at or near him. As far as I know, this person was not in the movie. So why would, you know what I mean? Why would you just point a gun at a random person on set? That's a problem. And of course, all the safety violations are another problem. Putting his finger on the trigger, You know, I don't know why he would be ready to shoot at that point. They're in rehearsals, but at the same time, like I said, there's no reason for him to shoot her if she's not in the movie. To shoot her. Like, even that doesn't add up. So, if he did point the gun at her and pull the trigger, why? Something is off. And apparently it was a 45 long Colt, I'm assuming Colt Army Peacemaker or something of that, you know, that make. So it was a single action revolver. But if he wasn't drawing it from a holster, then I guess he was just holding it and pointing it. Like, there were some reports that he drew it from a holster, and in that case, I was leaning towards maybe hammer flop. And what that means is, on a single action revolver, and a lot of the guys in the Old West were conscious of this issue, and they would actually take steps to make sure that their gun did not accidentally go off. What would happen is that hammer at the back of a single action revolver, if you don't pull it back all the way, what'll happen is it won't pull back far enough to set, so it'll flop. It'll get pulled back, and then, you know, the tension comes off and it slams forward again. Or you could drop it and the hammer could, you know, that's happened as well. So what they did in the Old West was they didn't carry a round. They carried the hammer down on an empty chamber, basically. If it had 6 chambers, they would have 5 rounds in it, and the hammer would be resting on an empty chamber, just in case. Now, the reason I thought of this, because they were talking about him drawing from a holster and then it going off, and I thought maybe if he drew it, and then I'm left-handed, if he drew it and pressed it forward, and, you know, he wouldn't even have to touch the trigger at that point. Like, if the hammer caught on a piece of clothing and just came back but then snapped forward, that's a possibility. But then again, why is he pointing it at somebody? Why are there rounds in the gun? There's still a lot of whys. Why do this? Why was that? You know? So, I really can't think of a way that he did not violate multiple firearm safety rules. I really don't see how he didn't, because there was a story of it being a ricochet, but now that looks like that's gone away and it was just a straight shot. A ricochet would be where the bullet struck a hard object and deflected or fragmented. That apparently is not the case now. So, as has been stated for the last 2 days. So I guess the ricochet theory's out. And just so we're all on the same page, Glock, Model 19. When you pick up a gun, that's what I mean by finger on the frame. It's almost like it's built to go there. Pointed in a safe direction. It's empty. So that's pretty much it, folks. See how easy that was? And now for dramatic effect. There are certain cliches in cinematography, on how to close out certain scenes and things of that nature. I'll collapse the slide. And what that'll do is that'll provide like a snap, clank sound. And it's a pretty good sound to end a scene. I know gun safety and cinematography. I'm being sarcastic.